Segment 1, Imperial China 1, the pyramid, the morning, the meal, the clothing. Good evening. Close your eyes gently. Breathe slowly. Tonight, I will take you very far into an ancient world. A world grand, majestic, but hard. It is Imperial China. For more than 2,000 years, this country lived under precise rules. Everything was ordered. Everything had its place. I will speak with a calm voice. The sentences will be simple. You may fall asleep during the story. It does not matter. The journey continues anyway. In this society, each person had a role. At the top, there was the emperor. He was called the Son of Heaven. He ruled because heaven gave him a mandate. When the harvests were good, when the people stayed peaceful, they said heaven approved. If famine arrived, if revolts broke out, they said heaven had changed its mind. Then, a new dynasty began. Below the emperor were the scholars, the mandarins. They were men who studied all their lives. They read Confucius. They wrote with a brush. They memorized very long texts. They passed extremely difficult exams. Success gave a place in the administration. Failure often meant staying poor, sometimes forever. Then came the peasants. They worked in the rice fields. They planted, irrigated, harvested. Without them, no one ate. They were respected in theory, but their lives were heavy and silent. The sun burned. The water rose to their knees. Mosquitoes circled. They continued anyway. Then the artisans. They made porcelain, paper, fans, tools. They created useful and beautiful things. They were rarely thanked. The prestige remained with the scholars. Next, the merchants. Sometimes very rich. They traveled. They bought. They sold. They wore silk. They spoke softly. Yet Confucian morality looked at them with suspicion. It was said they made money from the labor of others. So they were little respected. Their wealth did not change opinion. At the very bottom were the soldiers, the servants, the butchers, the actors, the condemned. They did the hard tasks. They were judged harshly. They had no voice. And the women? Often, they were not even in the pyramid. As a girl, you obeyed your father. Married, you obeyed your husband. Widowed, you obeyed your son. That was the rule. Calm. Cold. Strict. In some noble families, they practiced foot binding. Feet were tied, bent, held. They called them lotus feet. They said it was beautiful. In reality, it was pain settling in for years. In the morning, the day began very early. The rooster crowed. The village bell rang. You woke up, you breathed the still fresh air. You remembered the rule, filial piety. You greeted your father, your mother, your grandparents. You bowed gently, several times. To forget would be shameful for you, for your house, for your ancestors. You drank tea. The water had boiled. It was safer than plain water. The bowl warmed your fingers. The steam rose. The heart calmed. Breakfast was simple. A bowl of rice porridge. They called it kanji. It was rice with a lot of water. It was clear. It was soft. Sometimes a little salt was added. Sometimes a small piece of fermented vegetable. One chewed slowly. One did not speak much at the table. One looked at the ancestral altar. One thought of them. One thanked them in silence. Meat? Rare. Mostly for festivals. Eggs? Sometimes, but salted, kept for a long time. The bowl emptied slowly. The stomach warmed. The head stayed lowered. One went back to work. Clothing followed the law. If you were a peasant, you wore hemp. The fabric scratched a little. It was solid. It lasted long. If you were noble, you wore silk. It slid on the skin. It shone in the light. Certain colors were forbidden. Yellow, for example, belonged to the emperor. To wear yellow as a simple subject could be a crime. Shoes too spoke of rank. Simple and solid for the people. Embroidered and fine for the rich. Officials wore robes with long sleeves. Sometimes they had hats with wide wings. It was said these wings prevented whispering during audience. Everything was thought out. Everything was simple. You left the house. The morning air was light. A thin mist floated above the rice fields. The canals whispered. The bamboo swayed gently. The village set itself in motion. Slow, regular steps were heard. Baskets swung. Oxen snorted. The day could begin. Breathe gently. The world is vast. You are only a breath in the great history. It is normal. It is peaceful. You can rest your mind. Segment 2. Imperial China. 2. Work, exams, hygiene, law, marriage, the court. The rice field awaited you. The water was cool in the morning. It became hot at noon. You plunged the young shoots into the mud. You advanced step by step. Your shirt clung a little to your skin. Your hand stayed long in the water. Your back bent. Straightened. Bent again. The day was long. If it rained, you worked. If it was dry, you worked even more. You looked at the sky. You hoped for rain at the right moment. You had learned patience. You knew the earth, the season, the wind. If you were a woman, your tasks did not end in the fields. You prepared the fire. You cooked the rice. You washed the clothes. You took care of the children. You took care of the elders. You mended. You sat a moment. Then you rose again. In the evening, you walked a little more to find clear water. It was a life full of precise gestures. Sometimes there was a child's laugh. Sometimes a low song. Sometimes only silence. Silence was not empty. It carried the whole house. For the boys who studied, the road was different. They sat at a low table. They held the brush. They copied characters. They learned very old texts. They repeated in a low voice. The imperial exam was a long ordeal. One shut oneself in a small cell. One wrote. One thought. One wrote again. One slept little. One ate little. Time passed. To succeed changed a life. To fail as well. Some attempted the exam many times. It was said one man tried more than 40 times. His perseverance was admired. His fatigue was also considered. Hygiene was not easy. One washed in the river when it was hot. In winter, one sometimes waited weeks. Soap was rare. It scratched a little. One did what one could. Teeth were brushed with salt, charcoal, simple powders. Combs also served against lice. Clothes were washed by hand. The same outfit was worn for long. It was repaired. It was kept. Toilet was quick. Life went on. The law was precise. There were rules for the color of clothes, for the width of sleeves, for the way of mourning a parent. There were rules for almost everything. Justice could strike fast. There were punishments. Sometimes beatings. Sometimes exile. Confessions were light. They thought truth came with pain. One had to salute the magistrate. One had to respect order. Social peace was important. Fear too was part of order. It had been so for a long time. Marriage was a family affair. Parents decided. The matchmaker proposed. Birth dates were compared. Lineages were checked. Gifts were exchanged. The young woman left her house. She entered another. She served her in-laws. She learned the customs of this new home. Sons were hoped for. Sometimes a rich man took concubines. The first wife kept an official status. But the household became more complex. Looks crossed. Voices stayed low. At court, life was silky and sharp. The forbidden city shone. Roofs were golden. Walls were red. Gardens were silent. Stones were smooth under steps. Eunuchs carried messages. They observed. They listened. Scholars wrote memorials. They chose words as one chooses steps on a rope. Concubines learned the art of silence and smile. Sometimes they became powerful. Sometimes they disappeared. A poorly interpreted verse could create suspicion. A gesture too slow could disturb. One spoke little. One thought much. One slept a light sleep. Yet, beyond fear, Imperial China invented much. Paper, gunpowder, the compass, printing. Poems were born at riverbanks. Paintings showed calm mountains. Calligraphy breathed like forests. The people worked, suffered, sometimes sang. The seasons passed. Generations succeeded. The great machine continued. And you, listening to this tale, you may let your thoughts float. They may go to a field, to a path, to a lantern placed near a door. You may fall asleep gently. The ancient world rocks you. It drifts away like a boat on calm water. Segment 3, the Donner Party, to the departure, the shortcut, the snow, the waiting. Now, we leave Asia. We cross an ocean of time. We arrive in 1846 in North America. Families are traveling west. They dream of a gentle valley, of wide fields, of a clear sky. This path is called the Oregon Trail. Wagons move forward. The oxen pull. The children look toward the horizon. Among these travelers, there is a group. Later, they will be called the Donner Party. Parents, children, elders, simple people. They want a better life in California. The departure seems good. Summer is still here. The sun follows them. In the evenings, they sing. They cook near the fire. They tell stories. They think of the sea, far ahead. Then an idea arrives, very strong, a shortcut. They speak of a more direct road, faster. It crosses mountains, then a desert. They say it is possible. They say it saves weeks. The group chooses this road. Days pass. The terrain becomes difficult. The slopes are steep. The wagons creak. They are dismantled, reassembled. Time is lost. The salt desert opens before them. The light is white. The air is dry. They walk. They walk again. Water is missing. The animals suffer. Wagons fall behind. Things are abandoned. Faces become hollow. When they find the main trail again, it is too late. Autumn has already advanced. The other groups have crossed the mountain. They have not. They hurry, but the sky changes. The air grows cold. The clouds are heavy. The Sierra Nevada rises before them. Large. White. Silent. The snow comes suddenly. At first light. Then thicker. It covers the paths, erases the tracks. It fills the hollows. It closes the passes. The family stopped near a lake. Today it is called Donna Lake. Others remain a little further, at Alder Creek. They build shelters with logs, with wagon pieces. They wait for a window of clear weather. It does not come. The snow rises. The wind blows. The silence is heavy. They ration the food. They cook hides. They boil small pieces of leather. They keep the fire very low to save wood. They tell few stories now. They count the days. They count the children. They count the sacks of flour. Each morning they look at the door. It opens with difficulty against the snow. They put out their head. The world is white. All is white. The mountain does not move. It seems to listen. Ice becomes slow. Movements become very small. They speak softly. They dream of a free road. They dream of a grey sky without snow. They dream of a warm horse, of simple bread. They close their eyes. They save their strength. At night, they hear nothing. Sometimes the crack of a tree. Sometimes the breath of the wind. Hope bends, but it does not yet break. Segment 4 of the Donner Party. 1. The Rescue March. The Saving. The Scars. One day in December, 15 people decided to leave on foot. Later they would be called Forlorn Hope, the almost lost hope. 10 men, 5 women. They made wooden snowshoes. They took a little food. They looked at each other in silence. They said goodbye. They promised to seek help. They walked into the deep snow. The breath was short. The hills were long. The cold bit their fingers. The march lasted days, then weeks. The food ran out. The strength too. Sometimes they got lost. They went back on their steps. They fell. They rose again. Some closed their eyes and did not rise anymore. The survivors continued. Heavy hearts. Few words. After a long time, a few finally came out of the mountains. They found ranches. They spoke little. Yet they explained. Families were blocked. They were waiting. They needed help immediately. Rescue teams were organized. They climbed toward the lake. The snow reached the cabin roofs. Frozen doors were pushed open. They entered. They saw very calm, very empty eyes. They gave a little flour. They made a fire. But they could not take everyone at once. Children first. The weakest next. They went down. They came back up. Several times. Each trip, there were absentees. Each trip, there were also more living. Spring approached slowly. In spring 1847, the last survivors left the mountain. They went down. They moved toward the valley. The sun warmed their hands. The snow became water. The paths reappeared. Some found loved ones again. Others did not. Tears came without noise. Time did not erase everything. It softened the edges a little. Later, much was said of this story. The newspapers wrote. People told. The details changed. The memories too. Some became heroes. Others were judged. Truth and imagination mixed. They sought guilty ones. They sometimes forgot the mountain, the hunger, the cold, the fatigue. Near the lake, a monument was raised years later. A family in stone looked west. The base was high. It showed how tall the snow had risen that winter. Visitors came. They read the signs. They walked the paths. They heard the wind in the pines. The place was beautiful, but it remained heavy, like a breath held. The survivors continued their lives. They married. They worked. Some became prosperous. Others went further. Many did not like to tell. They kept silence. Their gaze became serious when questions were asked. The words broke. The night stayed long. This story is not only a story of hunger. It is a story of a road. A shortcut had cost very dearly. It is also a story of hope. Steps in the snow. Hands helping. Fires waiting. If you think of them tonight, think gently, without judgment. Winter has passed. The wind has calmed. The heart still beat. Segment 5, Wu Zetian, From the Shadows to the Throne, Reforms and Legacy. We return to China, but in another era, the Tang dynasty. There, a young girl was born into a wealthy family. Her name was Wu Zhao. She read. She wrote. She quickly understood politics. She spoke little, but she observed everything. At 14, she entered the palace as a concubine of Emperor Taizong. Later, she attracted the attention of his son, the future Emperor Gaozong. Destiny shifted. The young woman climbed, step by step, with caution and patience. The palace was a world of silk and silence. People moved softly through corridors. They bowed before screens. Words were chosen like steps upon a blade. Wu Zhao listened. She learned. She understood the forces, the fears, the alliances. She did not move too quickly. She waited for the moment. When Gaozong became emperor, Wu returned to the forefront. She gave him heirs. She spoke of reforms. She protected those who worked well, even if they were not noble. She promoted Buddhism, which supported her. She placed people of merit. She pushed aside families that were too powerful. The system breathed differently. Some applauded. Others trembled. Rivalries were strong. Accusations circulated. Sudden falls occurred. Politics was hard. The hand could be firm. But the machine of state worked. Taxes arrived. The countryside was more stable. The examinations grew in importance. Wu's voice became the voice of government. In 690, Wu did more than influence. She took the throne. It was unique that a woman became emperor in China. She announced a new dynasty, Zhou, to mark the change. Temples were built. Texts were written. Great statues were carved. They spoke of a mandate from heaven. The propaganda was clear and gentle. The symbols were powerful and calm. Under Wu, the administration grew stronger. Exams opened to more candidates. Merit counted more. Roads were maintained. Borders were watched. Peace was not perfect, but order remained. With time, Wu's health weakened. Favorites took too much space. Ministers worried. In 705, a palace coup forced her to leave the throne. Her son returned to power. Wu retired. She died the same year. Official records sometimes tried to diminish her image, but the mark remained. Her legacy was double. For some, she was harsh, manipulative, dangerous. For others, she was a clear mind, an effective ruler, proof that talent could come from elsewhere. History kept both faces. The truth breathed between them. Tonight, we can say only this: Wu broke a wall. She held power in a world that did not want to give it to her. And the world kept turning. Segment 6: The Ancient Roads. Empires connected, worlds opened. We finish with another thread of history: the roads. A road is not only a path. It is a will. It is a hand laid upon the earth. When an empire traced a road, it connected cities, markets, ports, garrisons. It carried the army, the law, the tax, but also ideas, music, beliefs, dreams. Very early, in Mesopotamia, the soil was pressed down. Carts passed. They followed the rivers. In Achaemenid Persia, under Darius, the royal road was built. From Sardis to Susa. Relays. Fresh horses. Fast couriers. The voice of the king traveled in a few days. The empire felt smaller, stronger. In Rome, the road became stone. They dug. They drained. They laid layers. They cut slabs. The road was straight. It resisted time. The legions marched. The merchants followed. cities linked together like pearls. All roads lead to Rome, they said. It was an image. It was also a reality in stone. In the Andes, the Inca Empire made another miracle. High paths, very high. Rope bridges braided by hand. Relays with runners. No wheel. No horse. Yet a surprising speed. Messages passed from valley to valley. The empire breathed through its suspended roads. In Han China, roads were organized toward the west. Postal relays. Garrisons. Watchtowers. Caravans advanced. Silk departed. Horses arrived. Buddhist ideas traveled. This whole network was called the Silk Road. It was not a single line. It was a web. A wide, supple fabric. In Ashoka's India, trees were planted along the roads. Wells were dug. Rest houses were built. Pilgrims walked. Monks traveled. Merchants traded. The king carved edicts of tolerance into stone. The road also became a text. The Greeks had more modest paths, but they carried thought. Religious processions. Philosophers walking and discussing. Oracles. Stadiums. Roads that smelled of olives and salt. Not great imperial axes, but fine veins full of life. Everywhere, engineers learned to master water. They built bridges. They dug ditches for rain. They learned to lay layers so the road would last. They invented relays, milestones, measures. The road became a common language. When a road was well maintained, cities grew. Trade flowed. Peace advanced. When a road broke, the world shrank. Villages were isolated. News arrived late. Fears increased. Tonight, imagine a road at dusk. The dust settles. A merchant folds his fabrics. A soldier tightens his cloak. A child looks at the distance. The road is empty, then full, then empty again. It keeps the memory of steps. It keeps the warmth of the day. It waits for dawn with patience. We have walked a lot, you and I. We have seen emperors, peasants, travelers. We have crossed winters and palaces. Now, you may sleep. The road of sleep is short. It is gentle. It belongs to you. Good night.